Howdy guys, and welcome back to the Southern Appalachian Anglers YouTube channel. My name is Ethan Hallfield. In today's video we're going to go over different ways to rig up your spinning reels. Both of the ways that we have our setup right here, what we use on guide trips, and it really just comes down to personal preference in between guide. But I'm going to show you two ways that both work really well. I'm going to start out with the simplest one right here. And this kind of follows the same premise when you talk to anyone that fishes. Everyone's got a different way of doing things. If you were to ask 5 different smallmouth anglers their preferred way of rigging up a rod, you're probably going to get 5 different answers. This is one of Captain Paul's rods right here. We've got a Shimano Stratic. The way he's got it set up, he's got half of the spool with braid, and then he's got, I believe it's a 6 or 8 pound test mono filling up the other half of the spool. The reason why this is a great way to rig up a rod right here, especially for those of you who are budget conscious, because in most cases, you're not going to get halfway down the spool of a spinning reel. So filling it up with braid allows you to fill up the rest of the mono, saves you a little bit of money in the long run because you're not burning through an entire spool of mono that you're not going to see anyway. So bringing it up like this is a great option, especially if you don't want to fish with braid to a leader, because I know there's some issues that can come along with fishing with braid to a leader. If you're kind of old school, this is a great way to do it. One of my rods that I've got here, and this is predominantly what I fish with now, and again, it's just a confidence thing between the two of us. Both of these things work equally as well, but on this spinning reel right here, I've got braid. This is 10 pound Suffix 832 Superline, and I've got it to the leader. And whenever I go out and I'm fishing with clients, one of the most common questions I get asked when they're using my stuff is leader length, and why do I go from braid to a leader? So for me, it helps with the sensitivity of the rod. Even adding, just half of your spool with braid helps immensely with the sensitivity of the rod. And that allows you to take a rod that can be slightly, maybe slightly more inexpensive rod and turn it into a rod that can be really good. So again, for those of you who are budget conscious, it's a great tip to have in the arsenal. But in here, I've got, again, a spool filled with 832 Superline. And leader length. This is where you start getting into a lot of debate between different anglers. How long of a leader do I have? So for me, especially if I'm out on a boat floating down for smallmouth, it's really all about versatility. If I tie on a super short leader, I'm sort of handicapping myself in a way because number one, I can't bring a ton of gear on the boat. So I don't want to have like a bunch of rods with different leader lengths. So what I do is I put on a pretty long leader, in some cases up to 20 feet. And the reason for that is it could be I run out there and I'm running like a moving bait, like let's say like a grub or a swim bait or something along those lines. If you think about it, if you've got a leader that's, let's say, maybe this long, right, 4 or 5 feet, give or take, and I'm casting it out maybe, 40 yards off the boat and I'm retrieving it back, and if I'm retrieving it perpendicular to the flow of the river, what will happen is that those fish will sometimes catch a glimpse of that braid, especially if you're using a high-vis braid, and then they see your bait come forward. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference in the long run, but to me personally, I've seen it spook fish. So I try to avoid that as much as I can by putting on a longer leader. Most people think too that, if you go from, or if you have too long of a leader, it kind of kills the sensitivity of the braid. Again, that's just personal preference and whatever you have confidence in. So what I do, I've already got this kind of set up right here, and I'll kind of show you how much of a how long of a leader I put on my spinning reels. I've already got my knot right here, and when it comes to knots, that's a whole another discussion for another video, but what I tell all my clients is find a knot that you can tie with confidence and learn that one and get really good at it. You can learn how to tie 5 or 6 different leader connection knots, but it doesn't do you any good if all those knots are going to fail anyway. So get really good at one knot and stick to that knot. I generally use an Alberto or double uni, blood knot works good, just whatever you have confidence in. Okay, so what I do is I've already got this, attached to my spool mono down here at my feet. I'm going to hold my line in between my 2 fingers right here. I'm going to keep everything tight. I'm not going to bother, some people will use like a wet towel to keep the braid from burning their fingers. That's good if you're filling up the spool, but I'm not going to bother with it right now because I'm only going to put a few turns of this on the reel. So what I'll do is I'll hold this really tight. I'm going to slowly start winding on. I'm going to go down to where I hit my knot right here. Come around it, and then once that knot touches the spool, I'll go 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, 4 turns, 5, and we'll stop right there at 6. And what this does, it gives me a little bit longer leader, and by doing that, I'm not constantly having to retie a leader knot all throughout the day. Because when we're floating down the river, even if I'm waiting for smallmouth, One of the biggest time-consuming things that you can do is sit there and have to retie a leader if you tie a really short leader. By doing this, you still get all the benefits of the braid while still having a long leader that you don't have to change out after changing a bait 4 or 5 times. Because every time you clip off a bait to try on a new one, or let's say you get snagged in a log or in a rock or something and half your leader gets sliced off, having a longer leader like this just keeps you from having to retie all the time. So these are basically the 2 systems that we use, and I hope that helps you out a little bit and you're fishing. If you have any other questions, feel free to hit us up, leave a comment below, and otherwise, tight lines.